Hi, this is Kat with Beadaholique, and in this video I'm going to show you a technique for finishing off your Kumihimo ends. What I'm going to show you in this video is how to sort of bulk up a braid so that it fits really nicely into a larger sort of cord end or clasp. So you can see here I have done a traditional 8 warp Kumihimo braid, and this is using the 8-0 Toho seed beads. And what you can kind of see is that obviously, and I'll show you over here, this is the braid as it gets finished, but I wanted to use a larger cord end to kind of help balance out that tassel that I'm using down here. So because that cord end has a large well, I need to sort of bulk up that braid. So this is what we're going to be talking about in this video here. So I'm going to show you exactly how to do that, but before I do, I want to show you a couple of other examples and techniques. So here's that version with a magnetic clasp. So you can see, again, I have those 8-0 Toho seed beads, and it creates a nice sleek finish, but of course your braid is going to be really thin in there, so we have to sort of bulk that up. So I'm going to show you what that looks like. Now this is an example here where I've used 11-0 Miyuki round seed beads, and I used a smaller magnetic clasp because I didn't want to build up that braid. So you can just sort of see side by side, oops, the difference there between the 8-0 and the 11-0 seed beads and the difference between what we need to do with the S-Lon. This one I did not need to bulk up because my clasp is a lot slimmer, and it kind of goes a little bit with the line of there. It is still slimmer than my beads, but you can just sort of see what that looks like. And then one more example over here is if you didn't want to do a clasp, this also works with cord ends here. So let me just sort of show you. This is a small cord end here, and it fits right over what that braid looks like. So this is what it looks like without that beaded portion, in case you're curious. And then again, we do have the larger ones, which you would want to use if you have beads or if you want to bulk up that end. So there's lots of options to do this type of thing and to finish off your Kumihimo, but I'm going to show you how to use these cord ends, and then I'm going to attach a toggle clasp to that and show you a little trick that I like to use. All right, so I have used the size 18 S-Lon, so that's what we're going to use here today. I actually have a little scrap left over from my project, so I'm going to start with that. And I also have a pair of chain nose pliers and a pair of bent chain nose pliers here, and I'm going to use those for my jump rings. I have a pair of snips. You can also use scissors as well. And then I'm going to be using some E6000, and I have my little toothpick there to help me out. So the first thing I'm actually going to do is a little trick, and this is to kind of let it dry nice and easy. So let me kind of get this up and out of the way there. I'm going to sort of turn it around. There we go. So I have my 2 cord ends here. Now before I go ahead and glue all my cord ends and everything, the first thing I want to do is actually attach that toggle clasp, because once I set my glue in there, I don't want to be futzing with it too much and sort of trying to attach that toggle clasp, but this will allow it to just dry and sit there, and then when it is all set to go, I don't have to get my pliers back out and finish all this. So I'm just going to attach one with a little jump ring there, set that aside. And these are just very easy. These are just 5mm 20 gauge jump rings. You can use larger jump rings if you like. I wouldn't go any smaller because this is nice and sort of clunky. And the reason I'm not using a magnetic clasp on this necklace is that it's a little heavy, so I want to really support that weight, so I'm going to give it a nice sturdy toggle clasp. All right, so now I have my 2 cord ends ready to go. So let's go ahead and do that technique of building up an end. All right, let me get that out of the way. All right, so here we have our finished Kumihimo. Now I have about 1 inch of that unbeaded braided portion, and I'm going to take one of my scraps here. This is maybe a couple feet or so. You don't even need that much. But what we're going to do is we're going to slip it underneath there, and I have about 6 to 8 inches in one hand and the rest in the other hand. So what we're going to do is we're going to tie a little overhand knot and bring that knot down as close as we can to that beaded portion and give it a really snug, tight little tug there. And I'm going to take that short end and I'm going to kind of hold that up here and let it go along the length of my unbeaded braided portion. There we go. So now I'm going to take this end, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to carefully wind it around, and this is what I mean by bulking up that end. So we're just going to wind it around and around, and what we're doing is we're creating a little extra kind of cushion there to create and fill in that space of that cord end, or this will work also for that magnetic clasp. It is the same type of technique. So we're just going to build that up and build that up, and you can kind of go up and down and around, And just sort of, you know, keep an eye on how big you want that to be. You can use a pair of calipers if you really want a super snug, tight fit in terms of what your clasp is. You might be using different clasps than I am here. So go ahead and you can kind of take your calipers, hold it and pinch it and see where you're at. And then kind of hold it up to your cord end. But just sort of keep building it around and around. And the other thing to consider too is that when we hold it next to each other, we want to make sure it goes deep enough into the well. So you can kind of just look down the barrel of it and see how deep it needs to go. And mine goes pretty much all the way to the top of this particular cord end. So I'm just going to tie it a couple more times here, right up at the top, making sure I get a nice snug fit. And now with this end, I'm going to kind of hold that out to the side, and with my short end, I'm going to come in and sort of with one hand do a little overhand knot, trying to get that knot really nice and close all the way up there at the top. And give it a nice little tug. There we go. And it might take you a couple tries to do this, but this is why we don't cut this end off first. So we want to make sure that it's going to be, that everyone's going to fit in there nicely. All right, I'm just kind of going to tie one more little knot there. There we go. All right, so now I can come in with my scissors or my snips, and I'm just going to trim that off as close as I can without clipping that little knot there. I can set those pieces aside. And now I'm going to come in, and again, getting as close as I can without cutting it off, without cutting off the winding there. I'm going to kind of sneak in, and you just kind of have to saw it because this braid is really thick. You can use also bigger scissors, which I may have wanted to use. So I'm just going to snip that off. And now, before we even move on to the other side, we want to finish one side off first. So I'm going to bring in my E6000 and my little toothpick. I'm going to get that onto my paper here. And you just want to get just as much as you need, no more than necessary. Close that back up. And take your little toothpick and really get a good glob of that E6000 on there. There we go. I'm just kind of twisting it so we don't have any of those extra little hairs there. And then go ahead and place that into the well of your clasp or your cord end. Make sure you get all nice and down in there. I'm going to grab a little bit more there. There we go. All right, perfect. And now what we're going to do is we're going to get this cord end in there, and you can see that I'm kind of putting it in at an angle, and then I'm going to do a little twisting technique to kind of really get that down and make sure all those cords go in there. And you can take your little toothpick there and just kind of help guide it in there, make sure all those little cord ends get kind of stuffed in there. And again, you can just give it a little twist there just to make sure it all ends up nice and neat on the inside there. So that is how you do that. All right, I'm going to do the other one really quick off camera, and I'm going to show you what the finished product looks like. But now that guy can just sort of sit there and dry, so I'm going to do the second one real quick. So this is that finished look right here, you can just see. And I think it makes a really nice, sleek finish. Now, when we say bulking up, this is what we mean. It's just sort of adding that cord onto the end to sort of bulk up that smaller braid so that it fits inside that clasp, and you have enough surface touching that inner clasp there to really get that glue facing kind of the right way and really, you know, really get it in there, because we want your work to be very secure, especially again in this design, which is going to be a little heavy because I have the tassels, I have a lot of beads here. So we want to make sure that that clasp is nice and snug as a bug in a rug. All right, so you do have other options when you finish your Kumihimo braids, so I have those here for you. We also have many other videos at Beadaholique.com. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit that subscribe button below to get all the latest from Beadaholique.